Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody. I'm sure there was panic last week when word came down from corporate that we were going to take the week off to celebrate Thanksgiving. But good news, we're back, better than ever, tanned and rested. And
where does the Lewis clan celebrate Thanksgiving?
we had a very small get together at our house, at my house, just very small this year. But then the wife and I, to celebrate our anniversary, went to Baltimore, Charm City, and got away, just the two of us, for a couple days over the weekend. So that was sort of part of our Thanksgiving / end of election / anniversary celebration.
Excellent. So
How about
you were married around Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I was. The 21st is my anniversary. Originally, it was going to be, I think, the 22nd, and I nixed that because I think JFK was assassinated that day. I think that's right. So we got married the day before, which I think was also JFK's anniversary, I think. But interestingly, what is it, the 22nd, I'll get corrected if I'm wrong, of November, I think it was Kennedy, Huxley, and C.S. Lewis, all three died on the same date. And so we did not get married that day. It's handy because you don't forget your anniversary, and you can always sort of take time off. You know, it's easy to get out of town. Usually do like Thanksgiving's on a Thursday, so that's a family thing, and then get away like on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it's sort of, nobody thinks it's weird that you're like out incommunicado.
But what prompts one to have a wedding, on a chilly fall day as opposed to a warm spring or summer day? What's the thinking behind that?
Well, that's a good question. Really, my wife and I are pretty unorthodox. I mean, for people who are conservative, we don't. We sort of do our own thing, you know. So for example, she, basically goes by her maiden name, and so we did things very differently. She did not have anybody walk her down the aisle. So just things that are a little non-traditional in some cases. The reason we did it was as unromantic as it sounds, it was based on practicality and pragmatism. We knew we wanted to get married. I think it was when we decided to get married, it was hard to schedule something, and so this was an easy time to schedule. And I think that honestly, it was the fact that I had a job back then that needed, that sort of demanded me to be there, the bastards. And this way this will sound like so unromantic and lame, but I could get married and then leave town on our honeymoon because it was Thanksgiving holiday. So it was based on that. But I like being different and walking to a different drummer or whatever the saying is. So I think that's kind of a cool thing. And my wife is like really cool, as you know her, Bill. And so she doesn't. She's like no drama Obama. She doesn't really do drama, and she doesn't really need the. I think our wedding and our honeymoon cost $5,000. Which is not, I'm sure a lot of little girls and maybe even little boys spend a lot of time envisioning this perfect, marriage and honeymoon and wedding ceremony. And we wanted that money to start a new life together, And so we had a very intimate wedding. We were married by a preacher. That part was traditional. And a very small, intimate dinner affair afterwards. And then we went to Miami. So.
Well, I ask you this because, one, I love learning, I love peeling the layers back of Matt Lewis and learn a little bit more about you every week. That's always very satisfying for me. But I also want to avoid having to stare into the abyss of our next 4 years for as long as possible. But I can
Well,
only.
no, but before we move on to that, you got to tell me about the very Scher Thanksgiving, where
Oh, right.
I talked about my family. Let's have some reciprocity there.
Well, we went down to Princeton, New Jersey, where my sister-in-law lives. She's hosted the last couple Thanksgivings. So my parents came, and another friend of the family was there, and of course, my wife and kids. So a little smaller than some past Thanksgivings. Which made probably the preparations a little less complicated, and we were without any of the few conservative strands of the family. So the political conversation, the tensions are more along the Bernie v. Hillary lines than the Hillary v. Trump lines. But it was still a chance for people that we hadn't seen in a bit to fully commiserate since the elections. As I suspect, a lot of I assume some families just don't do politics at the table. I'm sure in Trump households there was a lot of spiking of the football, and in liberal households a lot of tears brining the turkey, which is where we were at.
Yes. So I didn't have the political thing because it was very small, and luckily there was a Redskins Cowboys game on, which I find helps. But I am generally of the opinion that family is more important, and that we shouldn't really talk about politics. But it's kind of easy for me to say because I think that since I do this, and you do this. This is sort of what we do. The last thing I ever want to do is talk about politics at when I'm off duty. But of course, anybody who encounters you, that's what they want to talk about to you, and it's the obvious thing that they would bring up. I have it happen to me at church. Where people, and these are very well-meaning people, and they're great people, but I sort of go there to absolve myself of the worldliness of politics and the ugliness and the dirtiness of it, and to wash that away. And then there are people who will want to who are political junkies, and they might see me on TV or something and want to come up and talk politics, and of course I oblige them, but maybe there should be this is such an elitist sort of 1% type thing, but maybe there should be a little guidebook to our friends and family. Green M&M, no green M&Ms, don't make eye contact, and don't bring up the election. Otherwise you could do whatever you want. But
when my mother-in-law was alive, she was hardcore Tea Party, and she was my outside of talking with you, my main interaction with, the other side of the pond. But at family occasions, she would never want to talk politics. Maybe it's because she was outnumbered. But I think she had this strong sense that was sort of not appropriate, dinner conversation, because it leads to arguments and unseemliness, and it doesn't bring the family together. So whenever I would talk to her about it was usually in the car, not at the table.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is maybe we can model how you and I are pretty rare in our ability to talk politics and not get mad, angry. That's the whole point of the DMZ, of course. So maybe this is how you do it.
Well, be that as it may,
we've never once. Bill, have we ever once, in all the years we've been doing this, had a real? Have we ever had a problem at all?
No problem. I think we might have been relatively more heated at certain times than others, but
sure,
we've never stormed off the set.
But there's never been a conversation afterwards.
No.
I think the conversation afterwards was me going, "Was I too much of a jerk?" And,
right,
should I?
Right. What you see is what you get, people. This is not some artifice. This is the real DMZ. On camera and off. So I need to ask you. Politico has a story today. Most conservative cabinet since Reagan. Tom Price, hardcore. Privatized Medicare. You picked a Wall Streeter for Treasury Secretary. Betsy DeVos, super into school choice, be it charters or private school vouchers. Paul Ryan, was bragging before this is the new dawn of Republican governance. Are conservatives feeling it more now than ever, or is there any kind of hesitation still? He still wants to do this big giant infrastructure plan, which is far from traditionally conservative. Bannon talking about driving conservatives crazy with public spending, and Trump's general unprofessional behavior. Is there any undercurrent of nervousness, or do you think it's happy days are here again in Republican circles?
Well, to me, it's really bifurcated. I mean, when I look at Trump's comments in recent days, and mostly on Twitter, I find them troubling and disturbing. When I look at his cabinet selections, I find them, now this is from a conservative, I find them mostly reassuring. So like Betsy DeVos, right? This is, if you're me, now I know a lot of people will not like this pick, but this is a pick that could have come from Marco Rubio. This is a serious conservative pick, somebody who is an advocate of school choice, be that, charter schools or vouchers or whatever. So that's a great pick if you're a conservative. Granted, a lot of people aren't, but if you are, that is a very good and serious, I think, and fine pick. I'm trying to think of other picks. Tom Price at HHS is another classic example of very well could have been Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz making that same pick. So this is not something that a crazy outsider, right-wing populist would make. These are sort of serious picks. They're a little less establishmentarian than you might have gotten from like a George W. Bush, but I think that's okay, shaking things up. These people are within the bounds of sort of, the sort of mainstream paradigm. And so generally I would say that this is real, ambivalence. On one hand, still greatly concerned about his temperament and his rhetoric. On the other hand, generally happy with his selections. Of course, the big pick, as we taped this, that came down yesterday was Elaine Chao for Secretary of Transportation. And this is getting a little bit of pushback. I mean, obviously, I think liberals are questioning this in terms of the, cognitive dissonance or whatever with the drain the swamp mantra. But conservatives, I think if you're a principled conservative, there is some concern here because her husband, of course, is Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. And what happens when her boss tries to push through, an infrastructure bill that if a Democrat were pushing it would be, considered like a boondoggle stimulus Keynesian scheme. It'll probably be very popular with the American public. And does this create a conflict of interest for the Senate Majority Leader, whose wife would be obviously involved in that program? So that is, that's raising some eyebrows. But I would say, generally speaking, there is this sort of, again, weird mixed emotions. And the big one is yet to come, which is Secretary of State. But overall, as we talk, I think it's still kind of a wait and see attitude.
If I was a Republican, I would be very nervous because I don't feel that by and large that merit is the hallmark of these appointments. So you might like that Betsy DeVos is ideologically in sync with the right when it comes to education, but her track record in Michigan is pretty terrible. The privatization push in Michigan has been shown not to produce better results in those schools. I mean, there are certainly examples. This is an issue with charter reforms in general, that there's a lot of uneven performance out there. But you might want to pick the person who was on the upper end of delivering strong results, and she's not that, and she has no direct government experience, no experience running a bureaucracy before. Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, sure, he's a Wall Streeter. He's not. He wasn't an executive in the big firms. He had a lot of time at Goldman, but he wasn't CEO of Goldman, and has no experience in government or public policy at all, and by all accounts, never seemed to have much interest in the subject. And Treasury is not a rinky-dink backwater cabinet position. That's big stuff. You're managing the whole money supply here. So I would be nervous that these picks are being treated in a very political way. I mean, there's always an element of politics when it comes to cabinet selection. I mean, you could certainly argue that Hillary as Secretary of State was a political pick to unify the party. There's always elements of that, but I would be concerned that he's putting people in positions that they're not that they're going to be in over their head in. And that might cause other problems down the road. Here's your
sure. No, I think I would say, to his credit, it seems like there are a few of these picks are people who, like they say, again, not I've compared Trump to like Mussolini, but I can also occasionally compare him to Reagan. I mean, they say Reagan just wanted to do a couple of big things. And he basically did them. There's a million things that you could do, and it seems like, if you look at the people that Trump has put into these positions, I grant your premise, not the most experienced at managing a bureaucracy in general, and very well there could be huge scandals or problems that erupt because of that. But if you look at someone like Flynn, it's a guy who clearly wants to destroy and kill ISIS. And that's sort of his raison d'etre. You look at DeVos, somebody who has dedicated her life to school choice and giving, kids a chance, to sort of get out of failing schools. You look at someone like Price. I mean, this is a guy who his entire purpose will be to repeal and replace Obamacare. You look at Sessions. Here's a guy who is obviously obsessed with immigration, and that is obviously comports with Donald Trump's vision. So there's like a handful of things that Trump really wants to do, and it seems like he has picked people and put them in some key positions who have essentially dedicated a pretty big chunk of their lives to that goal and objective.
Well, I think in the case of... So go on.
Well, I was just going to say, and so, I think there's always a trade-off. These are people who are like passionate, crusaders on an issue that jives with Donald Trump's goals, but that person is, the type of person who is good at that isn't necessarily always the best manager or sort of bureaucrat. So I'll concede. I mean, there could be some glitches and problems in implementation and management, and those are not insignificant. They can be very serious and problematic.
I mean, Flynn, I think, Mike Flynn is going to be National Security Advisor. The reporting I've seen on him is, he was been in government for a while. He knows
30 years in the military.
Right. He knows the ins and outs of the counterterrorism fight. He has had his successes and has had some notable insights along the way, but he's also someone who has been seen as not a good team player, didn't follow the rules, did some stuff with classified information that's a little eyebrow raising, and at the end of the day, wasn't as he rose up in the ranks, as he had more authority, handle that authority unprofessionally. He was better when he was lower down. He was just like a guy in the room offering interesting ideas. And now at the NSA, you're managing several streams of national security and intelligence information. That's sort of a consummate, bureaucratic traffic cop post. So that's not the kind of post you just hand to your buddy. You want to have the right kind of person at that position. So if I was a conservative, I would be nervous that I'm not sure you got the right people in the right spot. As someone who
I mean, we need to see who he balances it out with at state. I mean, if it's Mitt Romney or General Mattis, I mean, all those things, or if it's Rudy Giuliani, that's a different thing.
This is being treated as like this grand signal of how Trump will govern. That if it's Romney, it shows that Trump is serious, and if it's Giuliani, it shows that he is, out to lunch. Or if it's Petraeus, maybe that means he's serious, or maybe that means he's overlooking ethical lapses. But let's not forget, George W. Bush picked Colin Powell to be Secretary of State, and that told you absolutely nothing about what was to come going forward. Right. So I mean, you could have a pretty face at state and still have the principal, the commander in chief, do lots of crazy things.
Yeah, and I mean, and titles, leadership and authority are not derived from titles. I mean, solely. Now, obviously, Secretary of State is a powerful and prestigious title, but you could be a weak, within the room. And if you're in the room, who is the principal listening to? Romney could get that gig and still sort of be on the outs. But I would say this. I would say that just going back to my premise. It seems like Trump is focused, in terms of foreign policy and national security, very focused on destroying ISIS. And obviously that's something that would be a good thing. But there's also geopolitical issues. There's China, there's Russia. Will he focus on ISIS and essentially ignore the other, geopolitical issues out there? And I think that, if he picks Rudy, and if you get Rudy and Flynn, that's maybe a signal that that's what he will do. On the other hand, if you have a Mitt Romney, then that might at least assure some of our allies around the world who are concerned about things other than solely ISIS. So anyway, I'm not saying that it's, I agree that that's not necessarily predictive, but it is a symbolic and important thing who gets who gets tapped to be Secretary of State.
Well, yeah, I find strange here is that Romney's being held up as the consummate serious pick. And look, he might well do a fine job. I think he is a serious person. He may lack a soul. He may have. He can shapeshift from one position to another, in a heartbeat more than anyone I've ever seen. Perhaps, maybe except for Donald Trump. But he's not. He's not a joke pick. But nevertheless, as far as if I was to line up all the people in the country who could serve as Secretary of State, a one-term governor who has never worked in the federal government and never had any formal diplomatic experience, that's not the top of my list either. So it still seems like he's not putting a lot of thought into right person for the right job. He might look at state as something that he wants someone else to do and not worry about. And so, Romney seems like a serious guy, and he won't embarrass me. So fine, have at it. I don't even know what Trump's objective is on the diplomatic front or if even he knows. There's a good podcast, a political podcast, Glenn Thrush's Off Message, where he talks with New York Times' Maggie Haberman, who used to be at Politico, and Haberman's been on the Trump beat, probably one of the main people on the Trump beat. And her insight is that Trump recognizes that he doesn't know a lot about foreign policy and needs help in that area. and that's why the Secretary of State process is so drawn out, and why he's being deliberative about it in his way. Based on her thinking, it seems like he wants a serious person there. I'm still not convinced he knows what a serious person is in terms of foreign policy.
Yeah, well, and some of the reporting, and I don't know if this is true or not, but some of the reporting suggests that he likes Romney because he looks like the kind of, just sort of out of central casting as like the kind of guy who looks like he would be a good Secretary of State.
Right.
I mean, the optics of it. So he's got that going for him.
So there's one other decision that they've
made. Which makes me wonder about Sessions, because he does look like a caricature of a Southern politician. So I guess maybe to balance him out with a Mitt Romney. I don't know.
Another choice that the Trump team has made, which would trouble me if I was a Republican, outside of the cabinet, is this decision to have the Congress only fund the government. They have to get a bill passed by December 9th to keep the government open. To have that bill be a stopgap going to March, so Trump can put his stamp on the next budget. And there are Republican senators that are squeamish about this because, having been in the legislative trenches, they're saying, doing a budget is hard. That takes a lot of time. So in your first 100 days, we have to not only get your cabinet nominees through, and some of them might take several days because they'll be controversial. Now we got to do an entire omnibus package, which is time consuming, and there's only so many legislative days on the calendar. You can ram stuff through the House, but the Senate is a difficult beast, and Democrats have lots of cards to play to slow things down. Obama went in with the Recovery Act, and they hung a lot of stuff on that tree to say, look, we put in a lot of reforms, right away. So if we've got nothing else done, we have that to say for ourselves. I don't know if they have a real game plan around the omnibus to do that. And if it ends up being a big time suck, that's just robbing you of days to do other big things you want. I mean, if you want to repeal Obamacare, that's a pretty time-consuming project too. So I just don't know if they've really thought through how to manage the clock in the next year.
Yeah, I don't know, what the calculus is there. Presumably Pence and Ryan are in on these conversations. But that's all I have to say about that.
You're not reassured either, I take it.
No. I mean, I don't know. I haven't even. I mean, I haven't really gotten around to sort of looking at that part of it. Still recovering from the election, but it's going to be very interesting to see, how Congress works with Trump, or serves as a check and balance on Trump, and I'm hoping that they do both when appropriate.
Now, the other announcement Trump made this week involves the deal with Carrier, the air conditioner and furnace manufacturing company. Like, it was a furnace facility that was going to close down a factory in Indianapolis, shift 2,000 jobs to Mexico. Now, we haven't seen the details of this, but there was a handshake agreement announced that Carrier will keep roughly 1,000 of those jobs in Indiana, and that there have been inducements given to them from the state of Indiana, where Pence is still governor. He didn't resign that post yet, right? I think he's still governor. And the promise of federal tax reform, which has been talked about as involving repatriation, allowing offshore money to come back to the states at a lower tax rate. The parent company of Carrier is a multinational that has a lot of money offshore, so they calculated, well, if we're going to get a windfall of money, that would offset whatever labor costs we induce by keeping some jobs here. I fully grant Trump's going to get a nice ride PR-wise in doing this, but I think, one, this is a pretty bad precedent going forward, because now any company can say, "Oh, well, I'm gonna threaten to go to Mexico too and see what goodies I can get out of that." So Trump, the consummate deal maker, seems to have weakened his leverage going forward. And two, the original carrier proposal was a 3-year shift in jobs in 3 waves. It wasn't 2,000 on day one. So to say we're going to keep 1,000 here isn't really that much of a concession, because those jobs weren't going immediately anyway. So they can play wait and see what happens with tax reform before actually committing to keeping them. So I'm not sure Trump really won all that much here. That's going to seem like sour grapes coming from me. He's gonna get the accolades, but I'm not convinced this is going to be a sustainable strategy for Trump to prove he is delivering for the white working class in this country. And Kerry's not all white, of course, but working class in general.
No, I think you're right. I think it's great politics, bad policy. I think that this is ironically, crony capitalism. I think it creates perverse incentives. I think it is government picking winners and losers. I think it is symbolism over substance. And I think it's great politics. I mean, I think that if you push through some bill that cuts regulations by a such and such percent and creates 5,000 jobs or saves 5,000 jobs, that wouldn't get you nearly as much attention as doing this, which looks like, wow, finally a guy rolled up his sleeves and gave those money-grubbing corporatists hell and said, no, you're going to keep these jobs here. The optics are terrific. I mean, it looks great. It's an active activist. I think we have a bias toward action. Finally, somebody who's willing to do something. In fact, I think you could have saved tens of thousands of jobs and gotten not nearly as good a press as this saving 1,000 jobs, which, as you argue, maybe, like, number one, who's paying for these jobs? Are we, the taxpayers, going to end up paying because now there's going to be I don't know, some sort of a military purchase of the parent company down the road of another one of their products. Who knows? I mean, who knows? Like, the deal that was cut that made this happen, but it looks great. And if, I suspect if Trump does things like this, for the next several years, it would. I don't think it's going to stop being popular. Like, I think it'll just. Well, but I don't think it runs out of steam. I just think it keeps working.
Well, I question that. I mean, obviously the short-term politics are good, but Obama was able to run in 2012, saying, "I saved the entire auto industry." I could go to the Rust Belt and say, I delivered you a very concrete thing. You all know I did it. You knew your jobs were on the line. You knew that related industries were on the line, and I came here and fixed it. If you're just doing the showy one-offs from time to time, but the larger regional economy is not getting any better, and even worse, I mean, if he does other things that are unforced errors, like, for example, if they pass a bill to repeal Obamacare, and they don't think through what the replacement is, or there's a talk they're going to do a repeal bill and delay the replacement for 2 years, which would induce all sorts of uncertainties into the health insurance market. If they end up making premiums go even higher than some of the reported premium spikes are being reported now, and people are feeling that, if he pulls out a NAFTA arbitrarily and there's a price shock that comes out of that, having a handful of one-off business deals, I don't think would offset, because there'd be concrete pain that people are feeling that would say, well, you're playing ribbon cutter, and my paycheck's being eaten away. So I would not I would not take.
Well, I mean,
political
like
comfort in that.
obviously there. Well, I mean, like obviously there are extenuating circumstances. I mean, if people are so 20% unemployment and people are pushing around wheelbarrows full of money, it doesn't matter that he does one of these little ribbon cutter things. But I do think that these have really an outsized impact. And in a way, they're more powerful because they're so small. If Obama saves the auto industry, well, of course he was good. He was going to save it anyway. He had to save it. It wasn't just him. He didn't build that. Other people saved it too. Yeah, but if one guy, Donald Trump, went on the campaign trail and said, "Believe me, we are saving these. If I'm elected, these jobs are not leaving," and then he gets elected, and before he's even sworn in, he's not even president yet. He's already saving 1,000 jobs. He's already single-handedly going and forcing these corporatists to keep these jobs in America. I think that it is incredibly powerful, and I think that Bill, I'm from a really rural country area, and that helped me. Even I didn't get the Trump thing, but man, did I see the populist working class thing coming. And I'm just telling you, I kind of know how they think and what they say, and it would be, the economy's, things are still rough out there. The economy's not going good, but did you see what he did? He went and he told them he saved those jobs. That's what we need in this country. I know how a lot of the Trump voters think and the way they think, and this is really this is arguably better politics than saving the auto industry.
So
it's ridiculous. I know.
What do you think it would take for that bond between the white working class and Trump to be broken?
Well, I think it's more cultural than it is. I mean, culture is a gut and a. When I say cultural, it's a feeling, it's a gut thing, it's a tribal thing, it's an identity thing. So it's a really hard bond to break. I don't know how it would be done.
Is there any element of macroeconomic performance that could make that region or that constituency turn on Trump and say, you didn't deliver on your promise?
I think there's always a tipping point where people abandon you. But I think that it's what he's selling is a sticky idea there. And I'm just telling you that things could be pretty bad, but if he's going around specifically stopping companies from leaving or shipping jobs away. Remember, okay, let's go back to FDR. The Great Depression got worse when he implemented the New Deal.
Wow,
for years.
It was a very slow heal. But I don't think you can argue that it got worse in the first term. Unemployment rose, for example. After but people said he at least cares. He's trying stuff. He's experimenting. He actually cares about us, and I think that's part of what Trump has going for him is that sense that he's trying his best. He's trying to figure it out. It's if I heard Chris Matthews say this a long time ago, and I think it's true. If there's a building, if you're in a big city and there's a building on fire, people want to see the mayor standing there. Wearing a yellow windbreaker, standing next to the fire company. He can't do anything, but they want to see that the mayor is there. And that's sort of George Bush flying over Katrina. It wasn't hands on, and I think that this looks hands on, and I think that there is a that resonates with people, and it goes a long way. And at a time when elites appear to be out of touch, literally and physically out of touch, this is very powerful. His doing this is incredibly powerful on a few levels.
it's In Touch specifically.
Well, you successfully depressed me.
That's just what I was aiming for here in the DMZ.
Anything you need to promote before we sign off for the week?
Just follow us here at DMZ Show on Twitter, and you can watch us here or listen. You could listen to this show if you're going on a car trip, you're on the metro, you're going for a jog. You just listen to us. You can get that on iTunes or wherever. Check us out.
So I'll let the folks know I've rechristened my my liberal podcast, which was called Talk Me Down. That didn't work. So it is.
Well, you tried to talk me down.
So we're now titling it "This Is Not Normal." My co-host Tracy Olson and I, and we're going to aim to do this on a weekly basis now. So we're going to so if you haven't subscribed yet, if you go to iTunes, the name has changed there. You might catch it still if you search for "Talk Me Down." But "This Is Not Normal" is the official name going forward. So subscribe there, and we'll try to keep you sane for the next 4 years.
Indeed. All right. Thank you, Bill Scher. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you back here next week in the DMZ.
Take care.
See ya.